what happened exactly after 1857? How did we come to this independence 1947? And while I was looking for some answers, uh, knowingly, unknowingly, I had put this quote on the flyer, which reads, which is a quote from Bande Mataram. We put Sri Aurobindo's name. The deeper we look, the more we shall be convinced that the one thing wanting which we must strive to acquire before all others is strength. Strength physical, strength mental, strength moral, but above all, strength spiritual, which is the one inexhaustible and imperishable source of all the others. So Sri Aurobindo is talking about this spiritual strength, and that really triggered me to find more about it. That somebody had asked that question to Sri Aurobindo, that why India suffered for so long, and one of the answers he had given, there are many answers, that because we stopped praying for the Shakti, we have abandoned the Shakti, so Shakti abandoned us. That's really a very short answer. Now, if you look at 1857 and that time, there were a lot of Krantikaris, there were a lot of things were happening. Rani Lakshmibai, her show, her warrior, her at the age from 19 to 30, it's just unparalleled what Rani Lakshmibai did. After Rani Lakshmibai passed in 1858, there is another name comes into history. I'm not sure why that name is there, but call it a destiny. Bahadur Shah Zafar names come into picture, and people talk a lot about it. But if you just do Google, don't have to do much research, you will find out he really did not do anything. Not to trying to bash him, but just we have to remain factual. He was living in a Purani Delhi, one small area where he had his palace, and somebody, I don't know who are those people, they say, hey, you are the new leader. And the day they appointed him new leader, then people started gathering. Some white men came and people killed them. And Britishers came, and within 1 week he was back to Rangoon. Yes. So the only thing afterward he did that famous ghazal, right, what Bahadur Shah Zafar has. But be as it may, destiny has its own way of working, and people get credit for whatever it means. It may be symbolic. He may not have done anything as a person personally, but that may have bridged the gap, or that may have started an era of Hindu-Muslim unity, call it, which seems like a mirage, right, these days, and it doesn't, if you talk about it, that unity, I'm not sure we all are on the same page, but nonetheless, that time period, it was there. So Bahadur Shah Zafar passed away, and then there was something else was happening at that time in India, and Ramakrishna Paramhans, Sri Aurobindo always used him, he used the word Bhagwan in front of him, Bhagwan Ramakrishna Paramhans. Ramakrishna Paramhans was doing his own sadhana in Dakshineshwar. He was worshipping Kali. Why Kali? That question started coming back to me, that why Kali? Why not any other deity? And the answer which came to me, because there was a spiritual destiny of India, call it, that is strength, the goddess of strength, which is Kali, has to be established. And Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans all this year did just that. He invoked the Kali, and we all know the many stories of Krishna Paramhans, and he used to talk to Kali, right? It was not just like any deity. So the mother of that strength was there in physical form, literally. And that was one of the reasons Vivekananda was attracted to him, because when he asked that question, that have you seen the mother? And he said, yes, I've seen it like I've seen you. And that was one of the things. So I found that Bhagwan Ramakrishna Paramhans, so due in the Indian history, has not been given what it should. He is revered. He is revered because of Swami Vivekananda. So had Swami Vivekananda been not on the surface, I'm not sure how many of would have known about Ramakrishna Paramhans. But in my mind, after reading and after going through this with this class, I truly believe that it was Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans who invoked that power of goddess, has established that mother of strength into the Indian soil. These natural laws are very slow, so we have to understand that. You can see nature around you, right? Nothing moves fast. So one may ask, so why didn't things happen so quickly? But if you look at the large span, the time frame what Ramakrishna Paramhans was there, 1836 to 1886. He left his body in 1886. In 1881, Swami Vivekananda came in touch with him for only 3 years, from 1881 to 84. He was not a very regular visitor, but he was attracted, so he used to go meet him. But by both accounts, those time period has not been attributed either by Vivekananda or by Ramakrishna Paramhans as something established disciple-guru relationship. It was 1984 when Vivekananda's father passed away, and he went to Ramakrishna Paramhans that as you do so many things, you talk to mother, can you ask something for me? Because they were very good, they had a very good fortune until his father passed away, but when he passed away, they became very poor. So he was in need of money and job was not there, even though he was a very intelligent person, and probably at that time in the Western philosophy, Western thinkers, Vivekananda by that time was a master in that. He knew Bible, he knew all the different Western scholars, and which when you come back to when you came to US, it all you can find in the different talks that how people were attracted towards him because he could talk about Bible. Even though is other than Indian spiritual, he could talk about Bible, he could talk about any other philosopher of that time, saint. So Vivekananda, 84 to 86. So if you really think about it, this 2-year time only Vivekananda had with Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans. And as we know that the strength of Vivekananda, he was physically very strong and stout. He was an intelligent person. He had a very good command on English and Bengali and maybe a few other languages. But it is Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans who gave him that medha, call it, or pragya, or the knowledge, what we generally use the word in the Indian definition of knowledge. When we say knowledge, we are not talking about STEM, right? We are talking something other than STEM. So that knowledge which lets you know everything, that knowledge was given to Swami Vivekananda by Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans. So that 2 years was there. So all this time, this establishment of the power, of the strength, the goddess is happening. After 86, when Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans passed away, Vivekananda and others were just staying in the Calcutta, and they all were doing their daily things, obviously running the different practices and discussion. But around 2 years later, Vivekananda started to travel India. Throughout India, he traveled. From Calcutta, he went to Banaras, and all literally from Punjab, Delhi, Kashmir to Rajasthan to Gujarat to Bombay to all that area. He traveled 5 years. He traveled throughout the India. And even though there are a lot of information is available of Vivekananda traveling in these 5 years and who he met, who were the people, but I believe what he was doing, he was sowing the seed of this strength, what Bhagwan Ramakrishna Paramhans has really established. It may not be coming out that way, but that's what he was doing, that he got that invocation, that power of the mother, and just simply by visiting the places, that power was just disseminating, right? Just keep coming out. How does that happen? There's a one incident in Ramcharitmanas. We all know that when Bhagwan Ram went to Bharadwaj Muni's ashram, they both were sitting in front of each other and there was no discussion. They sat for however long, I do not know, but after that they pranam each other and then went to the different. So Lakshmanji asked him, Bhagwan, what happened? You both were sitting, but you didn't ask anything. There was no question. So Bhagwan Ram said, Rishi Bharadwaj is like a sun. When you go in front of sun, you don't need to do anything. It just gives you the energy. It just gives you the knowledge. It just rejuvenates you. There's nothing to be done if you are in front of that sun. Vivekananda was that kind of sun, and we all know, I don't think I need to convince anybody that what kind of personality Vivekananda was, and especially after getting that blessing or the transfer of power, if we may want to use the word, what he received from Swami Ramkrishna Paramahansa, that simply his visits throughout the India was establishing or disseminating that power, that strength, what needed to be there. Around the same time, something else was happening. Dayanand Saraswati, which is also very less talked about person, Arya Samaj. He established Arya Samaj in 1875. Now, I'm not getting into the details of what Arya Samaj does or what do they stand for. But nonetheless, if you look at Arya Samaj, what were they doing? One common thing throughout everyone who was following, they were doing Havan. That was one major thing. No matter what else they were doing or not doing, but they were doing Havan. Havan is what? Havan is Agni. So you're really invoking that power. God's ways of workings are very different, right? What we do on the surface is what really happens is anybody's guess. So in my mind, that movement of Arya Samaj of that time also added a lot into this idea of strength differently, and that was being it, that invocation, what the Kali, Mother Kali, Goddess Kali strength, which Ramkrishna Param has really brought down and established in India that time, that was percolating very slowly, very slowly. So now this thing was happening in around 1893. Vivekananda came to America on 30th July, and around same time in February 1893, Sri Aurobindo came to India. One interesting thing to know in both cases that Sri Aurobindo, when he came to India, he was pretty much master of all the European language. All may be too big, but majority of the European language, French, German, Italian, Latin, English, obviously. And not only that, he knew, he had read all the scriptures or the writings of the writers or the saints or the philosopher of those languages or those countries in their original language. So when he came, he had a full understanding of how West works. And that we will see in Bande Mataram, how that helped Bande Mataram writing. And the same way, it's very interesting to see God's ways of working, right? Now Vivekananda is coming to America, so God does not want to leave anything for any guesswork or leave one thing. So if India had to get freedom, India is a different thing, a different way freedom had to happen. So the whole West had to come to that understanding of what does India really stand for. And I don't think even till today there is no one better than Vivekananda. What he did in those first 2 years in America has ever been able to do. We all just keep on repeating what Vivekananda said, and we take pride, and we should. But the kind of personality, the point is, he literally won the heart of West by Indian thoughts. And here Sri Aurobindo came from West into India and started to know Indian languages, Sanskrit, Bangla he knew a little bit I believe, but other languages, and the way he learned, he just reads the scriptures in the Sanskrit and he would learn it. So he, knowing all the European language, now knowing the Indian language. Now look at the timings that this, what Swami Ramkrishna Paramahansa started, this invocation. Something else happened in between 1860. Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay, Vande Mataram. Vande Anand Mat was written that time, and Vande Mataram came out in that book. We all know that the media, the communication of that time was what it was. How many people may have read Anand Mat, I do not know. Nonetheless, the idea of Vande Mataram was also established in 1860. It really lifted off 50 years later. And through this Bande Mataram newspaper, we will know when that Bande Mataram actually started to take the ground, when it became the freedom cry, the war cry, whatever term we want to use. So that's how I see that the strength was getting there, and that strength was making India ready for independence, which we now know, so we can obviously look back and put the dots together. So that was very interesting, I found. So about 1902, Vivekananda left his body, and things were, Sri Aurobindo was back in Baroda, and then he came to, but something else happened around 1905, Bengal partition. I think that incident is also not given due credit in Indian freedom struggle, what it has done to the freedom of India. Not many. So before we talk about Bengal partition, because what happens, our understanding of the words, if you say right now Bengal, we are talking about West Bengal, and the only thing I think, at least generally you say Calcutta, that's really what Bengalis mean to you, or to a lot of people, unless you are a student of geology and want to know history and you know which area Bengal is. Bengal of that time, one of the largest province of India. What is today Bihar, Odisha, Assam, Mizoram, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Tripura, Bangladesh, this was Bengal. And it was a very big state, province from Britishers' point of view. And that's why Calcutta was their capital. It was because, I mean, they came from that area, so they known that area much better, but not only they knew it, that area had so much. So that's why they were there. So in 1905, they may have their practical issues of administration because it was a very big land. And so the way they approached, they said, okay, Bengal needs to be divided in two parts, East Bengal and West Bengal. So what we know today, West Bengal is really from that area, is coming from West Bengal and also from Bangladesh now we have. So this Bengal partition, what it did, they tried to do two things. By that time, Lord Macaulay was already in the picture. He had understood the Indian mindset and what was going on. So on the name of administration, they really were trying to divide India by this, what we know, divide and rule policy. So we hear quite a bit that Britishers were doing this divide and rule. But this was one of the main events, you can say, where they divided literally Hindu and Muslim community. So the East Bengal was largely Muslim, West Bengal was largely Hindu, and they divided on that front. People of that time, of that era, did not like that idea, and they revolted against it. So there are a lot of revolts were going on throughout the India, right? Smaller revolts, people were obviously doing things against Britishers, and uh, but there was a lot of people started to come out of that. We also have to keep one thing in our mind now, because that's where a Bande Mataram newspaper starts to take shape or starts to come into the picture. That the leadership of that time, which was Congress, it was, we all know, 1885, it was established by A.O. Hume, and there were some founding members named Firoz Shah Mehta, Surendranath Banerjee. These are the names, very famous name in Indian history. They were the one, and the leadership of that time, they were only talking about the self government colonial rule, that okay, we will work under the British rule, give me administrative power, but you keep the whole thing. But even that was not considered by Britishers. So they were even, so the whole thought process of the leadership at that time was simply to get some concession. There is a term which was used at that time, it's called notables. So make me a part of notables. It was a 25-member committee where they would ask for 10 seats, but even the 10 seats, even if you have all the 10, not that you were getting 10, but even if you have all the 10, you really cannot vote anything out. So if you look at it in that perspective, even the notable, what they were keep pushing all the time to Britishers, were really of no importance in the bigger picture. They really could not do anything. And in 1906, August, but before that, so in the same time frame, we all know there's very famous trilogy, Lal Bal Pal, right? Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chand Pal. So in 1906, August, Bipin Chand Pal started this paper called Bande Mataram. And that time, by that time, Sri Aurobindo had came from Baroda to Calcutta, and on the insistence of the local leadership, that they wanted to start a new college called National College. And because of Sri Aurobindo's writing already, he was known already by that time into the circle because of his writings in Hindu Prakash. And he was a very fiery writer. He did not mince his word. It was one of his friend actually from Cambridge who was editor of the Hindu Prakash, and they asked him to write something. And first two articles what he wrote, they said, no, you have to really calm down and you really have to, tone down. And that's where Sri Aurobindo lost the interest of writing in that. But nonetheless, he was then very irregular writer in the Hindu Prakash. So he was working with Sayaji Rao Gaikwad, where he had a obviously not wonderful life in that sense, but he had enough money was given to him because Gaikwad was a king palace, so, and he was helping a lot there. But he came to Calcutta, so he was in Calcutta, and on the insistence of Bipin Chand Pal, he joined Bande Mataram to lead as a assistant editor. He started that way, and as soon as he was appointed or brought him into the team, it was Sri Aurobindo who started to collect people around that area and made an editorial team. Finance is always an issue, and Sri Aurobindo was the one who was really looking after the finance of Bande Mataram. There were two people there, Subodh and Nirod Malik, and they were industrialists, I believe. In that time, they gave 1 lakh rupees to run Bande Mataram. So, and that was enough to circulate Bande Mataram, print Bande Mataram. So they were okay financially. And as soon as Bande Mataram paper started, it really became the mouthpiece of the nationalist versus moderate, right? So this Naram Dal, Garam Dal, we hear this term. Sri Aurobindo used the term nationalist and moderate because of English language. This idea of Lal Bal Pal was there, but it was Bande Mataram newspaper who literally started to to bring that out, that thought process, that what does really this nationalist new party, they used to call themselves new party, wants to do. And there are pages and pages are available in Bande Mataram where the discussion is going on, and Sri Aurobindo's writing was par excellence. Even today, if you read Bande Mataram, if you start reading, you will not be able to leave it, because every line is like a worth of gold. You will just get hooked onto. It's so smooth, it's so flexible, it just and keeps telling you things. That time Britishers had this sedition law, right? So that's the law they had, where they were generally putting people into the behind the bar and with something which they did not like or didn't want it. But the kind of writing what was happening in Bande Mataram, Britishers could not do anything to the newspaper or to put the sedition law, at least initially. So what was Bande Mataram then doing? So if I continue on that thought process of what we were talking about, the strength, right? So strength is invoked. People were coming out on their own in Bengal that time against this partition, Bengal partition. Leadership was there, but people will start coming out into the large numbers on the streets that we don't want to do something. Bande Mataram newspaper, what it did, it brought that wisdom to the power which just came out, which was invoked into the people. It started giving them direction. The word Swaraj, Swaraj word was used by one Marathi, actually, Sri Aurobindo. So another thing you will find in Sri Aurobindo's writing, aka Bande Mataram, that he has always given reference to whoever has done whatever. So Swaraj was used, a term by in Marathi literature actually once. It was also used by Dadabhai Nauroji once. But nonetheless, Sri Aurobindo has given them credit that at least they had some idea about the Swaraj. So this idea about the Swaraj, and that idea started to come out into the Bande Mataram newspaper, and it says the Swaraj is the direct revelation of God to this people, not mere political freedom, but a freedom vast and entire, freedom of the individual, freedom of the community, freedom of the nation, spiritual freedom, social freedom, political freedom. And what Bande Mataram did, it put that string that what India really stood for. And the second line, it says spiritual freedom of ancient, spiritual freedom the ancient rishis have already declared. So we don't need to learn, we just have to follow what our rishis are talking about, the spiritual freedom. And he says the social freedom was part of the message of Buddha, Chaitanya, Nanak and Kabir. So what is missing, he says, what is missing is a political freedom. And this is the last word he's saying, is of the triune of this gospel, which we need to complete the story of India. And for that reason, we need independence. He says, without political freedom, the soul of man is crippled. Only a few people without this freedom can become a saint or can reach to the height of what Indian thought process want us to be. But political freedom is needed. We need that atmosphere where you can think freely, you can do things freely, and then work on your progress towards the life. If you do not have that political freedom, he said majority of the people will degrade their life because they cannot follow that spiritual freedom what ancient rishis has said. They cannot follow the social freedom what the Chaitanya, Nanak, Kabir is talking about. And it was keep on talking about the Swaraj. So the unity which we are talking about, it also comes out in Bande Mataram. The Swaraj finally is impossible without unity. So Bande Mataram newspaper was making sure that this unity of the Indian population at that time, there were a lot of Hindu Muslims were there already, but without that unity, you really cannot get the freedom. So until very late, I think in that time frame, Hindu Muslim unity was there to a larger extent, but obviously this divide and rule policy of Britishers, they were trying to break it. And there was a Nawab of Dhaka, his name was Salimullah. He was one of the main person who Britishers really bribed him. At that time, he had some tax due of 15 lakhs rupees, which they just let go, and they were using him to start the riots and all that thing. So unity is very much needed. So the Bande Mataram newspaper was keep talking about the Swaraj. Then it says that Swaraj, simply the talk of Swaraj will not bring the Swaraj. It is a living Swaraj. You have to live. So how do you live the Swaraj? It says you have to abandon the idea of self and replace with the idea of nation. We have to think about, because we are talking at that time when India was under the British rule, right? So today it could be a little bit different, but in that time frame, you have to forget yourself and you have to put nation first. Then only you can get the Swaraj. So while this idea of Swaraj was going on, the Britishers, or there were a lot of other newspapers were there also. It's called Bengali, The Mirror, Telegraph. There were a lot of them, and they all were, because Bande Mataram started talking about Swaraj, they also started to talk about Swaraj as a European model, where European model of Swaraj is simply political freedom, but you are still working with the confines of it. And obviously, and the Bande Mataram, this newspaper has many times, it points them, bring that point that anything what Britishers are doing, they are doing it for their own benefit. They are not doing it to do anything with you. So Bande Mataram keep on pressing that point of Swaraj, that why Swaraj is necessary. So liberty is in itself a necessity of national life, and therefore worth striving for its own sake. Secondly, because liberty is the first indispensable condition of national development in intellectual, moral, industrial, political. We do not say it is the only condition, and therefore worth striving for India's sake. And it also says that human progress is not a material, but a spiritual, moral, and physical advance. So the thought process, the wisdom, what we are talking about, Bande Mataram, it always related any activity which it was proposing to the ancient India. It did not left the ancient Indian thought process of this divine, of this self, all these things it continued and kept intact, because that's how the Indian masses think. A lot has been distorted, but nonetheless we all believe to some God for some reason. Whatever our understanding of that God may be of that time, you may fear, you may not fear. These all are debatable points, but nonetheless the majority of the Indian populace is spiritual in some sense. You can put them in religious also sometime, but those lines it's a different discussion. But nonetheless, for our discussion, I think the entire India is a spiritual thing. And I think it's very interesting that when people were saying India has never been a democratic or single country, this was the answer given by, I'm not sure it was given by Shrivindo or where I read it, that India is one because of this one condition. Whether you go from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, you go Attak to Katak, east to west, Gujarat to Paschim Bengal or Assam, there's one thing which is common no matter which language you speak or what you eat or how you dress. is the seeking. We are always seeking for something. We are always looking for something which we don't know what it is, right? So this seeking is the common ground of Indian unity. Whether you speak Marathi, whether you speak Gujarati, Hindi, Bhojpuri, Punjabi, any Telugu, Tamil, whatever language, and that's the reason you can find in all the languages there is no dearth of literature in any language, because everyone is looking for something which we don't know, but we know there is something there. So that seeking is the common thread which really makes India one. So that's what was going on with the Swaraj, and while the Swaraj was being put into the front, as I said earlier, that it is not the only condition. So it came with a few other items, what is known as Swadeshi, boycott, and national education. So Swadeshi started to become that you need to buy Indian, right? You need to produce Indian. But then if you are producing Indian and you are still buying American or British at that time, it is not going to help. So boycott is necessary. So they all are complementary to each other. So one thing which also Bande Mataram newspaper consistently said, do not look at these things as a single event, that okay, I can work for Swaraj and I will not work for Swadeshi, I will work for boycott. It's saying until everything is weaved together, it does not make sense. So boycott, there was another thing in boycott, that what are you boycotting? So when you say boycott, it really comes to the mind that okay, we will not use the goods. That's really the idea of boycott in general, what we have. But what Bande Mataram is talking about boycott, I think there are three things what you need to do for boycott. One, whatever laws are there which is against you, you need to boycott them. Not do it by not doing it. And be ready for the legal consequences. So it's not that you don't follow that law and then say, okay, I don't want to go to the jail, or I don't want to go through this punishment. You have to go through that, the law, whatever course it has, be ready for it. And the second, the executive, whatever the new resolutions are coming, the new things what executive body of government is bringing, you have to also oppose that. And it's also so you also have to oppose the people who are not doing the boycott, who are against the boycott, who are Indian and against the boycott, you have to boycott them as well. So it was giving the whole such a detailed analysis on daily basis, and not only it was giving the analysis, all of this, the articles which were coming out in Bande Mataram, they were followed by the meetings. Sri Aurobindo, Bipin Chand Pal, and many other people of that time of the national new party, call it, or moderate versus nation, they used to travel tremendously and talk to people about these things, that's what is going on and why you need this and all that. There was in 1906, I believe, there was a Barisal, there's a city called Barisal, and probably that is one of the first event, public procession you can say, where Bande Mataram was used in a large extent. People were using Bande Mataram. There was a Carlisle circular came out from the British government that if you use Bande Mataram, you will be put behind the bar. So individuals basis was happening, but I believe it was the Barisal procession which happened, where they were lathi charged by the police and the whole area was dispersed. That's first time Bande Mataram as a mass was sing, and people were fighting with the Britishers on that part. So we have this Swaraj, boycott, national education, But one thing which was missing in all this is what is known as, what Sri Aurobindo calls it, um, passive resistance. So in 1905, there was a Banaras Congress where the nationalist people, they were keep pushing for this Swaraj and boycott and Swadeshi, but Congress did not budge. The next session, 1906, which happened in Calcutta, it was Sri Aurobindo or Bande Mataram is synonymous both. They pressed so much that towards the end of the conference, they had to accept it. And all these things are captured in the Bande Mataram newspaper. So there are articles which talks about it, what happened in Banaras conference, what happened in Calcutta conference, and how these things were captured. So that was also going on. And Dadabhai Nauroji, there's a very interesting event happened in 1906 because Bal Gangadhar Tilak was supposed to be the president of the Congress, and there was no one actually who could really oppose him. So there was a reception committee of Congress, and president had to be appointed through reception committee. Dadabhai Nauroji used to live in London. Then president, or then the working committee of Congress, they called him without informing anyone, without passing any resolution, and on the day of president, they said Dadabhai Nauroji is here and he will be the president. Dadabhai Nauroji was such a star leader that nobody would oppose him. So he became the president of Calcutta conference. But all this, that how the moderates were pushing Tilak back and not allowing him, all this thing is captured in Bande Mataram. It's such a what we call masala, right? The political writing, satire, all these things are available. And about the Congress, one of the satire what Sri Aurobindo used is very interesting. We all know the story of Sati, right? That Daksh was her father, and he was not allowing Sati to marry Shankar Bhagwan. So Sri Aurobindo gave it's called Parable of Sati, is a whole article there where he's saying Congress is a Daksh, India is Sati, and this independence is Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva at that time was beggar. At that time, India had nothing, right? There's nothing to be happy about it. So obviously Daksha doesn't want that independence. So, and he kept on writing, and one thing interesting what he says in that, in all this what happened, his head was cut, they put a goat on his head, but ironically they put it backward. So whenever he tries to move forward, it goes backward. So saying that's what is the situation of Congress, that whenever it tries to move forward, is really going backward. So this kind of satires also in Bande Mataram, which is very interesting. So when you read, and then we have this passive resistance, right? So if anyone really wants to know a white paper on passive resistance, you can read Bande Mataram. There are like 6 or 7 articles, which starts with the doctrine of passive resistance. Second article is doctrine of passive resistance introduction. Third is its object. Fourth is its necessity. Fifth is its methods, its obligation, its limits, and conclusion. So if you read that white paper, if I may use the word, you will come to know that how much passive resistance, how the Bande Mataram newspaper was defining the passive resistance. And actually at one point it says that passive resistance may be the way India will get freedom. Now, to know the Sri Aurobindo's writing, Sri Aurobindo has never predicted anything. He has never said, okay, I'm saying this is my prophecy. He'll just write a line. It's up to you to think or see what happens. So, from where I see, I'm a devotee, obviously, but nonetheless, you can find these kind of prophetical statements coming out of the Bande Mataram, which turn out to be true in the later part. So, Bande Mataram is a very important document, and it really bridges this gap of Indian struggle that prior to 1919 from Bengal partition, which happened in 1905, and just so that you know, Bengal partition was annulled. So it's probably one of those few events where Britishers had to withdraw something worldwide, not only in India. And that was also reason they had to move the capital from Calcutta to Delhi. It was no logistic issue or there was no strategic issue. They were fed up. They could not, the shame, what you call it, right? That you have to annul. You did the partition and you have to annul the partition. So that's why they went back from Calcutta to Delhi to call it a new capital. So all these things are captured in Bande Mataram. So the Bande Mataram newspaper really completes the story which we are missing. With all due credit to people after 1999, the Krantikaris, Subhash Chandra Bose, there are so many there, right? But if you read Bande Mataram, it makes sense that how India, throughout India, pan-India, this thing was happening, how total India was in one voice was talking about independence, this political freedom. So to put this idea of political freedom, not once, day in and day out, into the public psyche, and supported it by different meetings, going, talking to people. It was established that, and this Vande Mataram newspaper, just so that you know, was covering the whole India at that time, not only in terms of readership, in terms of events. If anything happens in Tuticorin, I'm not sure how many people know, it's Madras. There was a huge riot happened in Tuticorin, and the leadership was there, was so adamant that all the corporation and everything, they just closed it to fight back with that riot, what happened. And this is one of the big event which people should know about Tuticorin. This was covered here. What happened in Rawalpindi, what happened in Lahore, what happened with Bengal partition, obviously it was there. 7th August, there's another date which 1906 or 7, it was declared as India's Independence Day that time also. So this idea of independence was already put into the mind or the psyche, if I may use the word, because mind forgets things. If things are in your psyche, you tend to remember this because then it becomes your own. And that was another point what Bande Mataram was keep telling. This idea of Swaraj has to be your own idea. It cannot be an idea of an organization. It cannot be an idea of leaders. If it is an idea of leaders or organization, you will forget it. So it has to be your idea of independence, political freedom, then only it will work. Something else was happening, and I'll try to close it soon because we can talk, there's a whole lot of there here. That Surat Congress, I think, which is also very important for us to know that this fight or the tussle or conflict between moderate and national after 1906, next conference was in Nagpur. And by that time, this nationalist party had become so powerful that the entire country was after them. Nobody was listening to the moderates of that time. So when it happened in Nagpur, the people who were supporting nationalists, they were so much in a large numbers that the conference organizers became frightened, and overnight they moved the location from Nagpur to Surat. Surat at that time, because it was Gujarat and Firoz Shah Mehta was from that area, so they had some ground there, call it. So they wanted to just, okay, let's do the conference there. In that conference, again, Sri Aurobindo had traveled from Calcutta to Madras, and it's really, he has given so many lectures. There are pictures available when he got down onto the Bombay train station, the number of people who were came to greet him or to meet with him in Nagpur and all this area. They started giving lectures. In Surat, on the insistence of Sri Aurobindo, which is also here in Bande Mataram, that Congress party was split in two parts. So moderates became separate, nationalists became separate, and so that's also something people do not know what happened in Surat Congress. Surat Congress is one of the great, important event, not great, but important event. And if you read this, is so funny. What happens in today's Vidhan Sabha, Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha, same thing happened there. Throwing of shoes, throwing of chairs, all these things were happening in that conference, literally. And all that is captured here. So, Bande Mataram newspaper has played a very important role to provide that guidance to the freedom struggle. The underlying passion was there, strength was there, but it provided that wisdom, it provided that harmonization within the different communities, it provided peace also. Now you will say, what kind of peace are you talking? Is a fight going on? But if you really look at the pictures of those times or even later, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, you will not find them agitated. So peace has a different definitions. What we may consider peace is a peace of different time. So everything is relative and everything has its own way of functioning in a different time. So what Bande Mataram newspaper did, it brought these four forces together. Strength, which was established by Ramkrishna Paramhans, by Swami Vivekananda, which was spanned throughout the country, Dayanand Saraswati, Arya Samaj. There are so many, it's not that my list is complete. Bande Mataram, Anand Math, Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay, they all were the people who really established that power, the goddess of power. And Bande Mataram newspaper, it really harmonizes that or equalizes that power and gave them wisdom. It's like a nuclear energy, right? If you don't know how to use it, it's just gonna burst everything. So, in my opinion, I've read obviously, and I would really encourage you to read Bande Mataram. You will really get up from your seat when you read, because it's so nicely written that you cannot leave the article when you're reading. So with that, I think I want to close this because we can talk a lot about, we have even each event is in its entirety, is captured. There is something happened, what is known as Jamalpur incident, Komila incident, right? That where this divide had started to happen. In Jamalpur incident, Hindus were beaten. In Komila incident, they were beaten, but after 3 days they came back and they start beat the other Muslims back. Police was supporting. All these details are given here for us to understand the dynamics of what was happening on the ground there, so that we can make that picture complete. Actually, Jallianwala Bagh did not happen overnight. I'm not saying in terms of the massacre, I'm saying in terms of the people gathering together. It did not happen over time. Swami Dayanand Saraswati, majority of the Punjab Krantikaris were Arya Samaji followers. So if you really think about it, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bhagat Singh, they are all Arya Samaj followers. So just so that you understand that Arya Samaj was not just it's a Vedic tradition they were trying to follow. They were trying to do social reforms, a lot of things, but it had a lot more impact on the people of that time. So all these things are captured in Bande Mataram. Event-wise, especially Bengal partition, what happens, how people were coming together. So this really, for me, it really completes the picture of understanding, and I believe that we have to take this message out there, talk to people, We are not trying to change anyone's perception. We are just trying to bring the information that, hey, here is something what you need to know, so that you don't have to think it just happened on its own. So that in my mind, that completes the picture of independence, and that's what I believe is the role of Bande Mataram, is that it bridges the gap of what happened in 1857 versus what happened in 1919, what happened in 1947. And it makes you understand how did India got the freedom, what was there. And just to closing, you probably know that we have started a project, Bande Mataram, an untold story web series. I think I will request Bala to give us some update on that project. And with that, I think I'll conclude. If you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, we can. Any question?
But I have a comment.
Sure. What we have learned is what was told to us, not necessarily all that happened. Okay? And when Vivek started talking about the Bande Mataram project, I think more importantly, the attempt on the project is really to convey what happened as documented, and really to kind of show, as we call the chain effect, right? The domino effect. We all know the domino effect. We see this every day. The Maui fire was started in a small bush fire, and look what happened, right? But ये स्वराज की जो और इंडिपेंडेंस की जो आग लगानी थी, that started off as a small flame way back and beautifully connected by him, right? It really started so far back, right? And what Bande Mataram did really was, हम लोग भी fireplace जलाते हैं, so you have to stoke it, right? आग जलती है, बुझती है, and you stoke it. So what Bande Mataram played the role was of that stoking, and made sure that this was that grassroots movement, which ensured that the independence for the country in the right spirit of it, not how it was aspired back then, as we will be your subordinates who will just administratively manage the kingdom on your behalf, right? That is not what independence was supposed to mean. That is not what Swaraj was meant to be, right? So I think Bande Mataram plays a very important integral role, and this project, which I'm super excited about, really captures the essence of it. I mean, we all know there are multiple ways to learn, but the best way to learn is when you see it, right? History is interesting for those who love it to read, and who have the capacity and the tenacity to read it for long hours, right? The other way to consume it is see it, right? So the web series actually brings that second way, and the attempt is a very sincere, honest attempt to depict reality or itihas as it happened, right? Super exciting. We have in the phase 1, 12 episodes. Already the script is done, complete. Who remembers the serial Chanakya? Everybody, right? Who was the director of Chanakya? Was also the main role of Chanakya, right? Anybody remembers?
Dr. Prakash.
Chini Prakash.
Chandra Prakash.
Chini Prakash is the choreographer. Thank you. But Dr. Chandra Prakash, correct? So guess what? Who's the director of this web series?
Chandra Prakash.
You get the right answer. So why am I mentioning that? I think when we all grew up, we all thought Chanakya was not only a well-made serial, but it was somewhere where the academics behind the story output was profoundly done. The script was actually well rehearsed, and he vetted it out before he took that project. Okay, I'm telling you this because the amount of work that has gone through by this guy, almost single-handedly, I think, it's been tremendous. And the project is going to be super duper good. One more question. I'm trying to keep it more question-wise, just to kind of put perspectives behind. How many of you have ever participated in building of a temple? हम लोग मंदिर जाते हैं, right? अधिकांश मंदिर जब हम गए हैं, बने हुए हैं, right? But ऐसा सौभाग्य बहुत कम मिलता है जब आप एक मंदिर के निर्माण में के कार्य करते हो, right? So this is also a very unique opportunity that you are getting to be a part of a journey which is going to take everybody to through what happened as it happened. Okay, when I say a journey where you all get to participate, is we are trying to put a team together, because obviously the phase 2 is to of course direct it, but then how do you make sure that it comes in the platforms? So how do you make sure that is word spread out? How do you fundraise? How do you come up with creatives? How do you get involved? There are a lot of ways in which, and a lot of people, a lot of mind power, a lot of creativity that we will need. So here is a big shout out, a big request. Spread the word about this project. B, if you don't know more, ask more about this project. C, try and see how you can get involved, how you can spread the word. I mean, and believe me, there are umpteen number of ways in which you can get involved. You means adults, you means kids, because we are trying to build this which needs to appeal to everybody. And this is something, it's a project unique, and I feel the reason I gave the reference to the building of a temple, this in many ways is that unique opportunity that you all get sitting so far away. I know we are all here, we all actually had tears in the eyes when we saw the Jhanda Bandhan, because sitting so far away still be, you know, I mean, they say that, right? You can take an Indian away from out of India, but cannot take an Indian out of his heart, right? So हम लोग अभी भी भारतीय हैं, और ये जो मौका मिल रहा है हमें कि ये कहानी, कथित कहानी को आप सभी के मतलब पूरे वर्ल्ड ओवर में फैलाने का, this is a unique opportunity of itself. So my job was to actually tell you all that this is an opportunity for all of you. So when you have some time, think it over. When you need more info, just reach out to any one of us. We will start, we have started the phase 2 of it, but we're going to really start it in a way that it becomes a real project to get it to that finish line. Okay?